It didn't have to be like this. Fathers, sons, brothers. Lost, gone forever. Is it really a victory if it costs us everything? There must be another way. Nah, Kerrigan, easy. Amon, what a joke! Give me control of your armies, and I will save the entire sector without a single friendly casualty. This is Giant Grant Games, and today we are here to ask the question, is it possible to beat StarCraft 2 Wings of Liberty without losing a unit? In order to test this question, we're going to need a few ground rules. 1. No unit I control is allowed to die. 2. Save all allies within reason. 3. Things that die in scripted events do not count. 4. Buildings are not units. And 5. Units with timed lives, such as the Raven's Point Defense Drone or Command Center's Mule, are considered units and are not allowed to expire before the mission ends. With these rules in place, it's a long run, so let's get into it. The first mission of the run is Liberation Day, and it's nice and easy. It's essentially the tutorial on moving and attacking. The only available units are Marines and the hero Jim Raynor. A constant theme throughout this run will be babysitting the squishy Marines, and this mission is no exception. Keep Jim in the front, have him tank the hits, and it's an easy clear. The only scary bit is when a bunch of allied Marines drop into the action, but with a bit of micro, we can keep the boys safe. Once a Marine's HP is low, he has to be permanently retired, meaning that there is a cap on how much damage we can take, but Jim is a very bulky hero, so it's not a problem. Outlaws is the first mission that we get to build stuff. The objective is simple: make an army, go down the path, rescue our allies, and crush the enemy. To help out, we now have the medic to heal up our biological units, but the healing is slow. At the beginning of the mission, I ended up building up a little bit too much. I wasn't sure what levels of resistance to expect, but it turns out that rescuing our allies is pretty easy. The real challenge is getting to the enemy base. These 3 Hellions can kill Marines in a single volley, so I put my medics in front to tank. And then comes the first roadblock of the run. This damn bunker. My Marines are still unupgraded, and medics cannot heal as quickly as the Dominion is dishing out damage. On top of that, the bonus range the bunker gives makes pulling my damaged forces back a bit more tricky. Eventually, I get pissed, grab all my forces, attack in, and it worked? After clearing the Bunker of Death, the rest of the base was a breeze. Watch out for spawning Hellions, and there's no issues. 0 Hour is the first turtle mission in StarCraft 2, and in my opinion, the easiest mission in the game. Most of the mission involves sitting in bunkers at home, but occasionally groups of allied infantry need rescuing. Due to rule number 2, I have to save them all. Once everybody is safe and behind my completely normal amount of bunkers, the only challenge left is to stay awake. Between missions, we get our first armory upgrades and some money to buy them. I opt for the Marine Combat Shield upgrade to make our squishy boys a bit more viable. Smash and Grab is a race against a Zerg to beat the Protoss and grab a relic. It also serves as an introduction to Research, a series of bonus objectives that provide important upgrades as the run goes on. I went to this planet first to unlock the Marauder. Their 100 HP and natural armor make them much less of a liability than Marines, even though they can't hit air and their damage kinda sucks. After grabbing the second bonus objective, I start clearing the Protoss base. They have a lot of defenders, but pulling them outside makes it a cinch. The final boss are 3 stone zealots who deal damage in a line. To mitigate this, I pull individual marauders to soak the shots and finish the mission easily. Back on the Hyperion, I can now recruit mercenaries, more powerful versions of basic units. They have a long cooldown and limited charges, but I'm gonna need their increased durability as my enemies get stronger. Continuing the durability theme, I head to the armory and grab stabilizer med packs for my medics. On Devil's Playground, we need to harvest 8,000 minerals to win. All mineral patches are gold, giving increased income, but there's a gimmick. Occasionally, the lava rises, covering the low ground and carbonizing everything it touches. To avoid the lava, we're given the Reaper, a fast jump jet equipped infantry specializing in maneuverability and skirmishing. They get put in bunker timeout because they have less HP than even Marines. This is a mission for the 3 M's: medics, marauders, and mercenaries. Basically anybody who can survive a baneling hit. As time goes on, I start to mine out my main base and have to relocate my command center onto the map. Being split up is risky though, and I learned the hard way that I might need a few more bunkers. Once my base is a bit more secure, I can head out onto the map, kill the Brutalisk bonus objective, and push into the southern base. There are 3 Zerg bases on this map, and limiting their number means less chances to be hit from a weird angle. That goes well, so I hit up another base while I wait for my mineral count to increase. With 2 of the bases down, the rest of the mission is smooth sailing. Definitely no close calls. With the mission complete, now the laboratory is unlocked. This lets me spend bonus objective research on new perks and units. I first grab the fortified bunkers upgrade from the lab and then go to the armory and get the kinetic form upgrade for the Marauder. The evacuation is a simple escort mission. Bring 5 caravans of NPCs from the south of the map to the north. Due to rule number 2, we need to be extra vigilant in our escort. This is the mission that we unlock the Fire Bat, for some reason. The first escort is uneventful, with only a few Zerglings to clean up. The second is technically harder, but my fortified bunkers are more than enough. Unless my allied marine gets separated from the tour group, at which point, reload. On my way back down, we grab the Zerg research bonuses, letting me focus entirely on the main objective. With some well-placed bunkers and Baneling target fire micro, the remaining escorts are a breeze. Keeping to the defensive theme, I grab concussive shells for the Marauder and Neosteel bunkers and head to Outbreak. Missions like this are ideal for a deathless challenge. The easiest way to lose a unit is by having to do multiple things at once. But being split into distinct day-night cycles means all I have to do is focus on defending the infested during the night and clearing out buildings during the day. This mission was absolutely not designed around someone investing as much in bunker stonks as I have, making my nighttime defense completely invulnerable. Knowing that I can't die means I can take the days slow and steady. I even use a missile turret and SCV to clear the supposedly nighttime bonus objective during the day. On the 5th day, the final structures fall and the planet is saved. Oh, and we unlock the Hellion, which puts the hot in hot garbage. On the Hyperion, we unlock the absurd Planetary Fortress upgrade as well as a projectile accelerator for the bunkers, making us officially out of ways to get defense upgrades. Feeling encouraged by my last few victories, I head to Bel Shear. On Welcome to the Jungle, there are 13 altars of Terrazine gas and our buddy Tosh needs some. This is a race between us and the Tal'Darim. We have to grab 7 before the Protoss can seal them away. Coming here at this point was a bit risky. The Protoss army has a lot of flyers, and this is concerning because my anti-air options are limited. The Goliath can die quickly here, so I focus on the Warpig mercenaries covered by a large number of medics. Combat is slow, but the low unit count from the opponents made things fairly simple. After getting my second batch of mercenaries, I head onto the map and secure a second base. This mineral line is a bit exposed, but having this area gives me a pivot point to control the center of the map, allowing me to be mobile and intercept the Protoss. At this point, Marines are far too vulnerable to be using on the field at any point, but I am still going to be using them a lot in bunkers. Their monster damage combined with the bunker's range buff and durability means that they are fantastic defensively. As I clear out the point that has the only warp-in Colossus in StarCraft 2, the Protoss steal a second altar, and I realize I need to get better control over this map. Noticing that the enemies only come from 2 positions, I decide to build a tiny bit of static defense, and then realize I completely forgot to grab the bonus objective, so I have to awkwardly slip past my enormous fortifications to grab it. Fortunately, I just dealt with an attack wave, so I should have time to— never mind. At least everybody got out alive. After cleaning up the attack and grabbing the relic, we just need to get the Terrazine. The Protoss steal a 5th altar, but I manage to get my defenses up and easily hold off the Tal'Darim while my SCVs extract Terrazine from 7 locations in rapid succession. Completing 8 missions means that I can finally go to the dig and unlock the ability to build compositions other than infantry. First is a short tutorial on how to use a siege tank, and then a long defense mission where I'm given an abandoned base with a large laser drill. The Protoss attack from all sides with powerful forces, but good siege tank positioning mitigates the incoming damage as the drill busts through the Xel'Naga temple door. Once I get set up with my upgraded bunkers and planetary fortresses, most of the fights are a breeze. The only scary part is when waves of flyers attack with warp prisms to drop on top of me. If they get near one of my non-bunkered marines or kill a repairing SCV, then I'm out. I was too afraid to send an army out to the bonus objective, so I floated a barracks towards it instead, cleared the area with the drill, and made a marine to collect. That marine then stayed there for the entire mission, but I'm sure he's fine. Eventually my defenses hit a point of being so overwhelming that the enemy barely gets a single shot off in their attacks. From that point, it's hands off the keyboard and wait for victory. Between missions, I grab the Protoss Research micro-filtering, the Siegebreaker's mercenaries, and both siege tank upgrades. After the dig, Zeratul shows up and gives me a fancy crystal so I can relive his memories in the form of missions. This is great for the run. His memories use Protoss units which don't need armory upgrades or lab research, and they also give me a lot of research and cash, so sign me up. This is a no-build mission where we use Zeratul's Void Prison to disable detectors and avoid threats. The beginning isn't very difficult, but once I get reinforced by some allied stalkers, things get a bit more tricky. If it were just Zeratul who had to stay alive, it would be easy, but his stalkers lack the cloak ability, so we can't sneak past things. Instead, this is a slow process of pulling enemy into small groups, using Void Prison to disable key enemies, and being patient. Waiting for cooldowns is key here, but a little bit of crisis management helps as well. Near the end of the mission, we meet with High Templar Karas and his zealots. Sadly, it's impossible to save them all. The Zerg numbers here are slightly too high, and more importantly, Karas storms his own units to death. The rules say to keep allied NPCs alive within reason, which I believe I managed to do considering they all died to Kerrigan after the cutscene anyway. After reaching the final temple, all we need to do is an escape segment, which is incredibly easy. Just blink over the rocks, any idiot can do it. However, I am not any idiot. Fortunately, our friend was only somewhat traumatized, and there's no way I would ever make the same mistake twice, right? In the next memory mission, we get to build a base. We play as a very basic Protoss tech tree, but luckily we have the greatest unit of all time, the Blink Stalker. While not particularly great at fighting, the ability to teleport away from danger is unparalleled in a deathless run. Throughout the mission, we're attacked constantly by a respawning hybrid named Mar. Each time he's defeated, he grows stronger, so we're going to need a lot of firepower reliably to beat him. When Mar returns for a third time, I have a fairly strong Blink Stalker army waiting for him, and he's easily sent home. I then head west to clear out an enemy base and secure it for myself. I then take control of the bridge, separating myself from Mar's base. This bridge is thin, and the defenses on the other side are both formidable and rebuilt if destroyed. We have to take it out in one shot. This means I need both a large army and perfect control. After a couple of tries, I decided that aggressively blinking onto high priority targets is ideal. There isn't enough space to blink wounded stalkers back, so swiftly eliminating the Immortals and Void Rays is the only option. Once Mar is dead, we get to spend our new research points on the incredibly super duper useful Hercules dropship and the actually good automated refineries. Continuing with the third of 4 Protoss missions, we move to Echoes of the Future, where Zeratul must investigate the dead Overmind while holding off frenzied Zerg assaults. Zeratul's mobility and cloak means that I don't need an army to clear to the tendrils. Instead, I can build a mighty wall of photon cannons to defend my base. Once Zeratul finishes interacting with a tendril, he recovers all of his HP, shields, and resets his cooldowns to make a quick escape. As I clear the third tendril, a frenzied attack comes in and is wiped out by my skillful defending, allowing Zeratul to waltz to the final tendril, making this the least stressful mission that I've done in the run so far. There is one final mission in this Protoss quest chain, In Utter Darkness, a vision of the end times. The only way to end this mission is to have all of the Protoss forces wiped out. There is no defeating the onslaught of Zerg and Hybrid. This optional mission will have to be skipped, which is a shame because the research points would have been incredibly useful for the upcoming missions. Instead, I use the research I do have to get the cellular reactor upgrade for my spellcasters. Which reminds me, I should probably go unlock a spellcaster. Ghost of a Chance is the first split mission in the campaign, and we can pick between one of 2 factions to support, and we're rewarded with their unique unit. Unfortunately, I have no choice in the matter between Tosh and Nova. If you choose to support Nova, you can cleanly finish the mission with no losses, but allying with Tosh means that you have an ally who sends hundreds of infantry to their death, so we're going Ghost. Nova has 2 abilities, a snipe that deals large damage to biological units and a mind control that can steal 1 target at a time. In order to make sure I comply with the challenge, I make sure my new interns are released from service before they're executed. The mission is split into 3 sections, where various objectives must be destroyed. The first area is very simple. Nova joins up with Jim's forces, and she can use the medic's healing to tank almost anything. And what she can't tank, she can mind control. The second section is a bit more annoying. After clearing a landing zone for reinforcements, I'm gifted with a large number of Reapers, a unit who I can't afford to use because they left their durability at home. Nova is thus left with 2 siege tanks and a Raven, making slow pushing the only option. Until I get the nuclear silo and use its contents, and then we're off to the third and final part of the mission. Here I'm given some Banshees and Vikings, who are both fairly squishy flyers that do a lot of damage. What isn't squishy is this Rabid Ultralisk that I unleash on the enemy. After thanking Mr. Ultra and stealing another nuke, I deliver it to Tosh with same-day shipping, and we're done. Sneaking around is fun, but I'm in the mood for a bit more brute force. I grab the increased repair speed upgrade and fire suppression system from the armory, and head to Tarsonis. The idea behind the Great Train Robbery, surprisingly, is to rob trains. The Diamondback is a high-damage, high-mobility vehicle that chases down enemy trains, loots them for cash to build some more. But for this mission, I had something slightly different in mind. Having siege tanks available for what is normally an early game mission means the enemy can't get in range before being shredded. After exhibiting the incredible skill of sieging up my army 8 times, we're done. The mission is over, and I can use some of my train bucks to buy the Krius stealth suit for my ghosts. Dead Man's Port is a 2-part mission where we race Colonel Orlan to collect 6,000 minerals, and once we succeed, Mirahan's mercenaries join our side, which we use to blitz Colonel Orlan's base. The path to his command center is insane though. Siege breakers, nukes, and battle cruisers cover him, making a deathless frontal assault basically impossible. So it's time for a little infiltration. After crippling Orlan's economy, I set my plan into action. A well-positioned ghost can barely hit the back edge of the enemy command center from this low ground position. The edge of the splash only does about 100 damage, but it does work eventually, and if it's stupid and it works, it's not stupid. Spellcasters have been working out quite well, so with my Protoss research, I decided to grab the Science Vessel and the Ocular Implants upgrade for my ghosts. I figure now is a pretty good time to finish off the colonist questline, where we're presented with another branching choice, to protect the colony or to follow the advice of the Protoss and purify it to remove the Zerg infestation. Unfortunately for the now Zerg colonists, I don't like the doctor, so we're getting purifying. The objective is simple: clear each marked area of infestation. If new infestation spreads, destroy it too. No bonuses, no funny business. The mission gives Vikings to fight off the settlements with their anti-air missiles, however, the enemy just sort of forgot to bring detection to the colonies, so the ghosts thrive here. Their permanent cloak makes them great at skirmishing, and when the defenses are tough, we have the answer to that as well. Their quick clearing keeps the infestations in check and allows the hives to be easily finished off. Engine of Destruction begins with a small squad of Marines and medics fighting alongside an AI-controlled Tychus. This boy is a monster, so I let him do a majority of the work and occasionally patch him up as we clear to the Odin. Once Tychus hijacks the behemoth, he starts his rampage, and I'm given a base to start building reinforcements for him. We get the Wraith, a fighter with strong anti-air missiles, and paper bones. Tychus's Odin is a monster against ground forces but weak against air, so the goal is to let our ally clear a majority of the bases while our Wraith fleet performs surgical strikes against the battle cruisers and other flyers that might be trouble. I also make some of the science vessels I unlocked and utilize their free healing to keep the Odin healthy. It's far slower than SCV's repairing, but everybody stays out of danger. And they can keep my strike force nice and healthy too if I ever venture into detection range. After clearing each base, Tychus takes a break. This is a great time to soften up the next enemy base and keep the Odin safe. And once Tychus finds the big red button, finishing off the Terran is no problem. Now that Tychus has had his fun with the Odin, it's my turn. The beginning of Media Blitz is a 5-minute sneak attack with the Odin where the enemies don't fight back unless something near them is hit. There are 3 enemy bases: a barracks base, factory base, and starport base. I can't eliminate all of them, so I opt to go for the factory base first because I'm concerned that down the line a siege tank could snipe one of my workers from afar. After cleaning up the factory base, I move on to the barracks base, but don't have enough time to fully clear it out before the sneak attack ends. Now we have to build up, and to help our army out, we have the Thor, which is basically a baby Odin. But they still aren't cheap, so I quickly move to take an expansion. In fact, let's get another one for good measure. While I get my economy rolling, the Odin cleans up the remainder of the weakened barracks base, and now the only thing that can hurt me is the final starport base. After macroing up a decent army, it's time to guarantee that we'll never be attacked again. And now all we have to do is stand on these control points for 30 seconds and stop the enemy defense waves. A simple task when we don't have any threat of a counterattack. Now all that stands between us and Char is the main quest line. Theoretically, we could have actually gone to this mission far earlier, but none of the missions in this quest line had anything that was important to unlock, so I put them off until I had upgrades to make it easier. For the Mobius factor, we start spawned on an island, meaning no ground units can get onto or off without transport. Luckily, our good friend Dr. Nerud has a couple medevacs to use, and they even come stocked with units. Medevacs are both transports and, like the medic, can heal biological units, but unlike the medic, they cannot heal each other, and they're pretty expensive. They're great to have on this mission, and we will never make a single one after. The mechanic here is that the ground is overwhelmed by a massive number of Zerg forces. We need to destroy 3 data cores in the city before Kerrigan can access the Bitcoin inside. And instead of walking around the Zergy streets, we're conveniently provided with the medevacs, making moving around the town easy. This mostly works fine, but the medevac heals more slowly than the medic, and I am not used to it and accidentally lose a unit and have to reset. After building a suitable defense at home, I make my main task force, a squad of ghosts. In the city, there are survivors on the rooftops that of course I have to rescue and immediately ship back home. There's also a research bonus for killing this Brutalisk in the middle of the map. This is the first time in the run that I perform a tech that's going to be integral later: Rapid Fire Snipe. Moving towards the second data core shows off why I picked the Ghost as my unit of choice. They can operate freely without endangering my medevacs, but their demolition speed for the data cores leaves something to be desired. After the second core falls, I grab the last survivors, sneak over to the final objective, and find a slightly faster way to finish it off. Supernova is one of the most unique StarCraft missions. A wave of fire that torches everything moves from the left to right of the map, and we have to use the Terran's ability to lift off buildings to hop between bases and evacuate before getting burned, all while being attacked by the Protoss. To help, we can finally build the Banshee, an anti-ground helicopter with a cloak ability and high damage. They're exactly what we need here. The early Protoss forces don't have much detection, so clearing the nearby camps is fairly painless. I wanted to get upgrades from my flyers, so I decided to build my armory in the middle of the map as it can't relocate. I just have to hope that the Protoss never find it. The first few Protoss attacks don't include detection of any kind, making them fodder for my Banshees. I grab some elite Viking mercenaries and science vessels to support my choppers. This fleet can easily control the Protoss as I hop between my bases. The first major enemy base is where the problems can arise. They have photon cannons which can detect my Banshees. Also, that armory that I built somehow accidentally upgraded ground vehicle attacks, so I'm working without any upgrades here. Instead, I need to rely on a critical mass of Banshees to knock down detectors before I take too much damage. Do I need any more mercenaries? Probably not. Once my air force is looking good, I sneak around to the top edge of the map, skipping past the 2 remaining enemy bases and straight over to the objective, taking it out for an easy win. Wait, 3 deaths? Did you miss it? It turns out that this mission has a little bug. The post-mission cinematic has 3 Marines that die, and they count as units being killed. Even though cinematic deaths don't count, I first had to figure out what was going on, and it drove me a bit crazy. But the solution is simple. Hit escape and skip the cutscene. Works perfect. On the Hyperion, I nab myself the drop pods upgrade as well as both Banshee upgrades. Now it's time for the endgame missions. Maw of the Void wants me to build battlecruisers, and I will kindly oblige. The entire map is covered with a massive number of resources on the ground to pick up, funding capital ship production far past what these bases normally could. A series of Ripfield generators deal steady damage to everything inside of a huge radius, but the battlecruisers barely notice as they knock out a generator and secure me a second base. This mission is actually pretty easy, but the Protoss keep running past me and attacking my main, drawing me back home to defend. Fortunately, the Protoss are uniquely stupid on this mission, so it ends up being fine. There are also some captured Dark Templar and Stasis prisons who will join us if rescued. After my armada is online, I roam around, dive the Ripfield generators, laugh at how bad carriers are against battlecruisers, get caught off guard, lose my second base, and barely manage to evacuate. Having no more mining, I decide to go all in, rescue the 2 remaining Templar groups, ignore the mothership boss fight, fire a volley of Yamato cannons to take an easy-ish victory. We've made it to Char. No more planet hopping, no more upgrades, no more unit unlocks. All that's left are 3 final missions. Gates of Hell is a 2-part mission. First, we defend our base as a series of drop pods fall around us. The forces inside are pinned down by Zerg and we have to rescue them. Of course, no man left behind means that we have to save them all. While the drop pods aren't too difficult, the Zerg are constantly attacking both sides of my base. It's important not to venture too far out, else I risk running into a random attack. Once again, ghosts are the answer here. Permanent cloak means that moving outside is much safer. Each time we rescue reinforcements, I worry less and less about my defenses at home, but actually grabbing the pods becomes more difficult. The last 2 waves of pods drop 2 at a time, requiring me to split my forces to secure them both. Once everybody is safe at home, it's time to rescue Warfield, and show off why we got our own drop pod research. Instead of clearing through the entrenched Zerg Canyon, I land a few ghosts at Warfield's base and end the mission with a bang. The second to last mission is a final branching choice. In preparation for the final battle, we can either destroy the Zerg Air Force or their Nidus worms. Today, we're taking out the air. And to do it, we're making our own. I start by attacking the nearby Zerg base with Banshees and a battlecruiser. After securing the expansion, I start big battlecruiser and science vessel production, capping things off with the mercenary battlecruiser Jackson's Revenge. The objective of Shatter the Sky is super unique. We have to destroy a series of cooling towers, each is guarded by a progressively stronger group of enemies. Once destroyed, the towers explode. Flyers are recommended here for quick evacuation. After the first cooling tower goes down, I head northwest. The battlecruiser's Yamato cannon is perfect for these surgical strikes, and the second tower drops in seconds. When the second tower explodes, a Leviathan appears, an overpowered hulk of a flyer that I ignore and move on. Because I built up before taking down the towers, my capital ship fleet is unstoppable. I simply float over to the last 2 objectives and blast them. This is it. All In is the final mission. Every decision in this run was made with this mission in mind. Every piece of tech researched, every credit spent, used to make All In as smooth as possible. but nothing can make this mission easy. All in is hell. The objective is simple: survive. To assist, we have the power of a Xel'Naga artifact that can occasionally wipe out advancing Zerg. It's nice to have, but mostly we're on our own. After a few minutes of defending the Zerg attacks, waves of Nidus worms begin to emerge, releasing waves of Zerg until dealt with. If not answered quickly, these worms can easily add over 1,000 enemies to the mission, making it impossible. On top of that, Kerrigan herself shows up to fight 5 separate times throughout the mission. The Queen of Blades will advance on our base. I'll spare you the details on how many hours of failing it took me to try to find the correct approach. Instead, let's go over Kerrigan's abilities and discuss why she counters almost every unit in the game. Implosion instantly destroys a nearby mechanical unit, which is a great start for a Deathless run. Razor Swarm deals massive area damage in a large radius. Hardened Carapace reduces all non-spell damage taken to a maximum of 6. And Spell Resistance causes all energy abilities to deal half damage. Kerrigan also has high ground vision as if she were a flying unit and deals double damage against buildings. She's durable, one-shots big units, launches powerful area damage against small ones, and shreds any building she touches. The only reprieve is that Kerrigan does not gain the area damage Razor Swarm until her 3rd appearance, buying me some time. After hours of attempts, here is the answer I found to beating all in without losing a single unit. Take your defenses and put them behind the starting bunkers while building 4 planetary fortresses, 2 at each choke point. Once finished, evacuate the starting bunker and set up the tanks behind the planetaries to shell attackers. All the infantry goes into the timeout corner as we pump out tanks from the factory and set up a shadow ops as well as some barracks while making SCVs to repair the fortress walls. Once the ground seems secure, start producing ghosts, siege breakers, and Duskwing mercenaries. At this point, the Nidus worms appear. Send the 3 banshees as well as the Duskwings out, cloak up, and start targeting them down. They can stay cloaked for a long time because we got their armory upgrades earlier. Sneaker ghosts onto the high ground near the artifact, and then whenever the banshees are not in use, remember to uncloak them. They might be able to stay cloaked for a long time, but as soon as they run out of energy, they will get snapped in half. As soon as Kerrigan makes her first attack, evacuate the tanks on side she approaches and use SCVs to repair. She doesn't have Razor Swarm yet, so we're free to do so. As soon as she targets the planetary fortress, the ghost can attack from the high ground. She won't change targets as long as the planetary survives. Once she's down, return to controlling the banshees and assault the Nidus positions ASAP. Meanwhile, float a pair of command centers to the high ground and start building more planetaries. Next up is the Overlord drop wave. The infantry we started with are perfect for cleaning this up, and while we secure the base, build a couple of depots near each high ground planetary. As Kerrigan makes her 2nd appearance, this one is the easy one. Do the same thing as the first time, but with more units, take her down, and then get back on Nidus duty and prepare for Kerrigan's 3rd strike. This is where it gets hard. Kerrigan gains the Razor Swarm ability. SCVs can no longer safely repair my buildings. But I found a small AI abuse. Pull back the tanks and repairing SCVs, keep the ghosts at a safe distance, and Kerrigan will cast her first Razor Swarm at any hostile target that has at least 3 damageable targets nearby. Also known as this high ground planetary and his 2 depot friends. Now, all we have to do is kill her before she can cast it again in 9 seconds. This is where the ghost comes in. Snipe deals 12 damage to Kerrigan. She has 1250 HP, meaning it takes about 105 snipes to defeat her. Unfortunately, my fleshy body means that I cannot click snipe 100 times in 9 seconds, but I don't have to. Rapid fire snipe is a technique where you set your keyboard repeat rate as fast as it can go and then set the hotkey to target snipe to be the same hotkey as confirm ability target. Now all we gotta do is hold down the hotkey while focusing on Kerrigan, and we've sentenced her to death via invisible firing squad. As long as we have enough ghosts to finish off 3rd Kerrigan, the rest of the mission is more of the same, just harder. Niduses spawn faster, attacks appear more rapidly, and Kerrigan repeats her aggression a 4th and 5th time. But finally, the artifact reaches 100% charge, and 1 unit dead. At some point during the mission, a Nidus worm spawned on top of my repairing SCVs, and my tank line proceeded to vaporize some innocent soul with their splash damage. I couldn't figure out who it was, so I had to restart the entire mission. But after 4 long days and 5 more Kerrigans, with a staggering 10,207 to 0 kill death ratio, I can confirm it is possible to finish Wings of Liberty without losing a single unit. Man, that was a lot. I'm never playing this campaign again. I think I lost a Ling. Well, better reload. Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Giant Grant Games, and I'm here to ask, is it possible to beat StarCraft 2 Heart of the Swarm without losing a unit? Before we begin, here's a quick refresher on the rules of the run. 1. No units can die. 2. Save all allies possible. 3. Deaths in cinematics do not count. 4. Buildings are not units. And 5. Units with timed lives, such as the Broodling and Locust, count as dying when they expire. And one small note before we begin, Heart of the Swarm does not have a units lost counter on the score screen. It'll be back for Legacy of the Void and Nova Covert Ops, but for Heart of the Swarm, I had to rely on my Twitch viewers to keep me honest. If you want to join them, I stream every weekend. With that out of the way, let's get into it. The first mission of Heart of the Swarm is Lab Rat. At a glance, this mission is a joke. First, you're taught how to make drones, buildings, and zerglings, and after you have an army, it's time to break free. Usually this involves creating an unstoppable wave of lings, rescuing additional reinforcements as you go, and finally crushing the Eradicator boss at the end. The problem is that zerglings are really weak, and while the enemy bots are not particularly strong, without constant pullback micro, zerglings will die to even simple enemy groups. Splitting larger groups of bots into small waves is required. After rescuing all the zerglings, we hit the first roadblock of the run, the Eradicator. This big robot deals 10 damage per shot, and zerglings in melee range will always be hit 4 times when trying to retreat, killing them. I don't have access to burrow to dodge shots either, and if the zergling is the only combat unit I can make, it's impossible to keep them alive. So I guess the run is over, unless... The way the StarCraft AI works is that it scans all nearby enemies and puts them into 2 categories, threats and non-threats. Then it'll attack a threat, preferably sticking to the same target. Most units are always threats, but drones can shift between states. I gather minerals with all my workers and send them to attack the Eradicator. Once the Eradicator drops a drone to within 1 shot of death, I hit the return cargo button, causing it to start returning minerals to the hatchery. The AI then goes, "My previous target is not a threat, finding new target." And now I just have to do this about 15 times in a row perfectly, and success. Mission 1 finished. Back in the saddle is a no-build mission. I control Kerrigan, and an AI Jim Raynor follows me around an Umojan facility. Due to rule number 2, I have to keep all Umojan forces alive. Kerrigan gains her first 2 abilities, Kinetic Blast and Crushing Grip. The first area is mostly a breeze, stun enemies with Crushing Grip and eliminate, Kerrigan tanks. At the end of this area is a challenge. 3 allied Marines and 2 allied Marauders help defend against a room of Zerg and Terran attackers. The problem is that the Marines are poorly positioned and I just keep dying. To fix this, I use Kerrigan to push the Marines and Marauders and use Jim's face to tank some of the hits. Part 2 is a series of timed pushes through enemy forces. It's not particularly hard. Once I reach the tram, I'm on defense. I use Kinetic Blast to snipe incoming dropships so that enemy threats do not cascade out of control. And finally, it's the Archangel boss fight. Unfortunately, the Umojan AI is not savable here. They're scripted to run into the explosions. So all I can do is dodge the Archangel shots, play safely, and finish the mission. Rendezvous is a 2-part mission. First, I have to survive for 15 minutes until I'm delivered a powerful army, and then use it to crush the Terran. I also unlock the Queen, which isn't really a combat unit, but it marks the last time I will ever willingly build a Zergling. Queens have the Transfuse ability, which provides a small heal over time to a friendly target. This combined with Spore and Spine Crawlers gives me a strong initial defense. There are allied infested structures on each side of my base. They're intended to act as a small roadblock for the enemy. When they die, they spawn Broodlings with a timed life to attack the enemies. Broodlings are going to be a constant source of frustration during this run. Zerg has a ton of different ways to spawn Broodlings, and they're normally a very powerful tool in their arsenal. But due to their 5-second lifespan, not only am I not allowed to make any units that spawn Broodlings, but most importantly, almost all Zerg buildings spawn them when they're killed, ending the run. This means that even minor attacks on my bases can be potentially catastrophic. I'll have to defend very well. While I wait for reinforcements, there's a bonus objective. Zerg allies pinned down in caves that come under my control once I rescue them. No man left behind means we gotta save them all. When moving around the map, I send Kerrigan solo. At this point, Kerrigan is pretty weak, and cleaning up enemies is a slow process. Once the defense segment is over and Noctool's army arrives, normally it's an easy win, but frustratingly, most of her reinforcements are useless Zerglings. So instead, I have to build up a critical queen mass and march them across the bridge into the enemy base. Whenever a queen gets low, I burrow her to keep her safe, while Kerrigan snipes the tanks and eventually the enemy base falls. After the mission, I get my first upgrade, Hardened Carapace for the Zergling. Wanting to unlock a bit more robust combat units, I head to Kaldir. Harvest of Screams is a mission where the mechanics of the map dominate my decision making. Occasionally, flash freezes hit, making all units who are not immune frozen for 60 seconds, unable to move or attack. Initially, the Zerg are vulnerable to this, but after killing an Ursidon Matriarch and absorbing its essence, we become immune. I also unlock the Roach, a low damage, high durability unit who can burrow to rapidly regenerate HP. They can't hit air, but against any ground target, they're exactly what I'm looking for. The mission objective is to destroy 3 spires that are nested into well-defended Protoss bases. There are also bonus objectives to kill some Ursidons around the map. From now on, bonus objectives will level Kerrigan up. As Kerrigan increases in level, her base stats improve and she gains access to a variety of new abilities that will help in the run. The early Protoss forces lack detection, so I can be pretty aggressive with my army. Burrow any damaged roaches and they'll regenerate quickly. I try to pick fights right as the flash freeze hits to secure some easy kills. The area around the first spire has a mineral field, so I grab a second base and continue to build up my forces. During the flash freezes, I know I'm safe, so I use the time to kill the bonus objectives. After that, the rest of the mission is a breeze, or should I say, a freeze. Defend against the Protoss, wait for the flash freeze, clear to the next objective, rinse, repeat, and finished. And after the mission, I grab the adaptive plating upgrade for the Roach. Shoot the Messenger is where the difficulty starts to ramp up. It's a defense mission where there are 3 conduits on the Zerg side of the map. The Protoss are trying to escort waves of shuttles to kill them. The shuttles can't attack, but their escorts sure can. To help against these flyers, I'm given the Hydralisk, an all-rounder unit who's good against both ground and air, but it's pretty squishy. The first couple waves of shuttles are pretty minorly defended and go down easy, so I instead focus my attention on the stasis chambers that are littered around the map as bonus objectives. Most of the Protoss on the map are actually a pretty easy cleanup, but I have to watch out for Psystorm. It can end a run in seconds. The third shuttle wave introduces carriers into the mix, and I have to make sure I have a large concave so I can collapse onto the enemies quickly. Starting with the fourth wave, multiple shuttles approach at the same time. Usually, I would split my forces to eliminate, but the risk of losing a Hydra with a half-size army is too high. Instead, I have to kill one group and then quickly book it to the other before it escapes. And the final waves are the most dangerous. Multiple Colossus and a mothership can melt unsuspecting Hydras quickly. I have to use Kerrigan's stuns to disable enemies and take them out before they can attack. After the mission, Kerrigan can grab her first new ability, Improved Overlords. I also grab Ancillary Carapace for the Hydralisk, and I unlock the first evolution mission. Unlike the unit upgrades I've selected so far, evolution missions permanently change a unit into one of 2 options, and they're absurdly powerful. The later stages of Heart of the Swarm are completely balanced around Zerg having access to these immensely powerful abilities, which means you know exactly what I'm about to say. This is the first evolution mission. It is not possible to complete without losing a unit. I don't think even Alpha Star could do it. All evolution missions have to be completed in a certain order, but you can technically skip them all even if I'm probably the first idiot to ever willingly do so. From now on, I'm gonna be taking the best of the Dominion and Amon with a severely weakened army. Enemy Within is a fan favorite mission in Heart of the Swarm. Kerrigan sneaks a larva onto a Protoss shuttle. The larva then morphs into the Queen Niadra, who consumes bioessence of specimens on board to evolve, grow more powerful, and give birth to an unrelenting swarm that then overtakes the ship from the inside. It's awesome. That's how I used to feel anyway, before this run. The beginning is easy, but once Niadra hatches into a queen, things get a little frustrating. Niadra initially has a supply cap of 8 and can only create Zerglings. Niadra herself is nowhere near strong enough to deal with the enemy Protoss, but in the later stages of the mission, I can't afford to have my supply taken up by useless Zerglings. I end up making 5 pairs of Lings, using Niadra to tank the hits as the Lings wrap around and kill. I also employ burrow ambushes to get close to the enemies without taking fire. Normally, there are some times that the Zerglings have to act independently, such as fighting this photon cannon, which would be impossible. But if you get just the right angle, Niadra can attack it through the door. I won't complain. After destroying the warp drives comes the monster of the mission, an Archon. I don't think that Niadra and her Zerglings can kill an Archon without a unit loss. It deals too much damage and has too much HP. Instead, I have to get tricky. I burrow the majority of my army near the destination marker with the exception of Niadra and a single Zergling. After the warp drive goes down, I move Niadra forward and burrow her. The single unburrowed Zergling now has to play the world's most dangerous game of chicken, moving towards the Archon to pull aggro on it, staying close enough so that it won't reset, and kiting it down to the warp room without being hit. I then burrow the Kiting Ling, unburrow Niadra, and book it to the control point. After getting there safely, a short cutscene plays and all of my burrowed Lings are teleported to Niadra's position, safe and secure. The next room gives Niadra enough essence to evolve. Her supply cap is increased to 15, and now she can make roaches. With 5 roaches in my army, things are significantly easier for a bit. The next 2 rooms have a lot of Protoss and Stasis chambers, and they come out in small but strong waves. Quickly managing each wave is very important. And the room after that, it's the same idea, but the enemies are much scarier. I end up needing the DPS from the Zerglings, but managing everything at this point is getting really difficult. But after the room is clear, Niadra can evolve a final time to unlock Hydralisks. With the added firepower of the Hydras and a mind-controlled Ursidani, we destroy the escape pods and finally finish this very difficult mission. After finishing Kaldir, we have the option to travel to Xeris. This mission chain is on a planet that is very important. At the end, Kerrigan receives a massive boost in power, something that I need badly. In Waking the Ancient, there are 13 altars of Quilgore meat scattered around the map. You and Brack's pack are racing to control the altars. Whoever controls 7 of them first is the winner. This is my first encounter with the Primal Zerg, which are basically normal Zerg with a reskin. I also unlock the Mutalisk, an expensive flyer that doesn't do very much damage, but flyers in StarCraft 2 can stack on top of each other, meaning a large flock of mutas can deal out damage very quickly. Flyers are also way easier to retreat when injured. After feeding some meat to the Ancient One, Brack himself comes to play. Brack is really tough. He does massive damage in an area and can take down Kerrigan in a few hits. He also comes with a strong escort of Primal Zerg. And he's immune to the stun of Crushing Grip, meaning that I can't just crowd control and eliminate him. I'm gonna have to get a little bit creative. The solution I ended up coming up with is to plant Kerrigan on his attack path and use Crushing Grip. While Brack is immune, his escort is not. Brack then continues to advance while his army is stunned. Kinetic Blast on Brack and run. The stunned enemies will start chasing soon, but after Kerrigan's cooldowns are refreshed, we can dive in with the mutas, Kinetic Blast Brack a second time, stun the army a second time, and kill the boss as fast as possible. And then remember to retreat, because this mission takes a few seconds to end after Brack is dead, so we just gotta keep running. And after the mission, I grab yet another durability upgrade with rapid regeneration for the Mutalisk. Swarm hosts are a weird unit. Instead of fighting themselves, they spawn locusts to go into combat. The locusts are incredibly bulky, do huge amounts of damage, but they only have a 15-second time life, meaning I can't use them. The Crucible is built around using waves of locusts to defend attacks from various directions. Kerrigan is not present here. Instead, she's taking a bath in the spawning pool. The combination of Kerrigan being gone and swarm hosts being literal garbage means defending is going to be rough. Luckily, the game gives me a sweet cooldown to help defend. Every 2 minutes, I can spawn a huge number of flying locusts to help with the fight, who die after 30 seconds. Initially, I tried walling in for this mission, making a barricade of spawning pools, spine crawlers, queens, and hydralisks to defend. But the Primal Zerg were way too strong. They could easily break one of the walls, which would spawn broodlings, which would then die. After a few hours, I had to restart completely, and tried going for Mutalisks instead. Rapid regeneration was incredible here. Instead of defending at my base, I split my Mutalisk flock into 3 parts. 2 groups patrolled where the large enemy attack waves spawn, killing anti-air before it could get out of control, while the 3rd group intercepted small attacks from other directions. The mission goes well enough until the final few minutes where an absurd number of enemies attack from all sides. With 1 minute remaining, I had to bring all my Mutalisks back to help and keep my base secure. And at 25 seconds, I was finally able to use that spawn locust cooldown to support my army. The Crucible ended up taking a few hours of trial and error, but it was absolutely worth it, because now I get Primal Kerrigan. In the Mission Supreme, Kerrigan has finished her bath and is ready to wreck house, gaining new abilities and rapid energy regeneration. The goal of Supreme is simple: kill all the Primal Zerg pack leaders. Before each leader, there's a selection of enemies to cleave through. Normally, Kerrigan and her escort would fight through them, but for safety's sake, I burrowed everybody except for Kerrigan and just ran through on her own. Once I reach a pack leader, all of my units are teleported to Kerrigan. Yagdra is first, a giant worm who breathes lava and hatches eggs. Targeting down the eggs before they hatch makes the fight really easy. In the second area of the mission, I thought I could burrow Kerrigan to reset the position of these enemies, but that didn't work out well. After fleeing from the scene, I reach Kraith, who rotates through 3 abilities. He fires volleys of spines that are really easy to dodge, he charges my army that's really easy to dodge, and once he's hit a wall with his charge and is stunned for a few seconds, some Primal Zerg fall into the area. He then goes back to using his spines. Just like Yagdra, the fight is mostly about managing spawning enemies. Kraith himself is very difficult to die to. The final area is filled with banelings, and even on a normal playthrough, I think it's best to just take Kerrigan on her own for this part. When you don't have to babysit an army, it's a quick section. On to Sliven. Sliven is by far the most threatening of the pack leaders. Her first ability does an acid spray that deals minor damage in an area. It can be ignored. But the real threat comes from the masses of banelings, which are constantly spawning throughout the fight. If the banelings connect with the Hydras, it's a reset. Finally, Sliven spawns Ravasaurs, long-range artillery Zerg. They must be eliminated instantly. I couldn't fight a prolonged battle against Sliven, so I opted to kill the banelings ASAP, kill a Ravager spawn, and then burn her down fast. This fight seems to be designed around you losing a lot of stuff to the banelings really early, so having everything alive means my damage is huge. After Sliven dies, it's time for the final fight. Zervin is a two-staged encounter. During the first phase, tentacles constantly smash the ground. They must be avoided. He also spits out primal Zerg during the fight, including Ravasaurs and Ultralisks. They can kill Hydras in 2 shots, so I have to be careful. After Zervin is reduced to 25% HP, he enters stage 2. Lightning Breath blasts Kerrigan's position and must be avoided. But as long as you don't enter this phase while enemies are still alive, you can DPS through this pretty quick. With the planet Xeris completed, Kerrigan receives an immense power-up and new abilities. And now that Kerrigan is ripped, it's time to liberate the Zerg homeworld of Char. My first opponent is a renegade queen named Zagara, who's taking control of the broods on the planet. Domination introduces the Baneling, a fan-favorite unit. It deals high damage in an area around it like a deadly green landmine. It also dies when it attacks, so it's completely unusable. Domination is a 2-part mission. Kerrigan and Zagara are racing to collect 100 eggs that are scattered around the map. You usually win by collecting faster than Zagara or engaging her, forcing a temporary retreat. Once I reach 100 eggs, I'm given a massive death army of banelings to assault Zagara's main base. This hive cluster is very well defended, and you would be a fool to not get the baneling army before attacking it, which is exactly what I have to do. While I build up back at home, I send Kerrigan around the map to do some chores. There are 2 infested command centers to destroy for bonus levels, a good number of Vespene gas pickups around the map, and Zagara needs to be bullied a little bit. And when 20 or so Mutalisks are ready, they join up with Kerrigan, and it's time to start assaulting Zagara's base. The siege has 3 distinct phases. First, the Mutas poke in and draw the defenders out. As soon as Zagara spawns, I pull back and engage away from the defenses, and then engage her production structures directly. Once the hatcheries go down, Zagara can no longer produce. As long as I respect Zagara when she respawns and don't get too cocky, the rest of the base falls without too much resistance. After subjugating Zagara, it's time for General Warfield. In order to reach his fortress, I have to push through the Bone Trench, and Warfield is having none of that. He sends the sector's slowest battlecruisers to try to deal with the Zerg threat. You can go to Char as your second planet, long before Kerrigan turns into her primal form. So these next couple missions are just not balanced around her incredible firepower, and I'm more than willing to abuse that. Fire in the Sky is simple. When you spread creep to a Scourge nest, it awakens and shoots down an enemy battlecruiser. Each subsequent nest is farther inside of the Terran territory, so constant progress must be made. I'm gonna send Kerrigan alone on this mission, turtling up at home with a wall of spine crawlers and queens to defend. Most of Warfield's defensive outposts consist of some type of static defense, a bunker or siege tank plus some infantry. This makes engaging easy. I poke at the defenses, pull the infantry out, and kill them. There are a few groups of allies to rescue in the rubble, and honestly, the hardest part of this mission is making sure that I found all of them. Once the 7th nest has awakened, the mission is over. This one was a piece of cake, which means it's time to reclaim our homeworld from the Terran. The Dominion is about to feel the true might of the Swarm. I'm given a nearly limitless army of Zerglings and Banelings by Zagara to aid the initial assault, which, of course, I can't use. Old Soldiers is another 2-parter. First, I'm given the Death Army with tons of reinforcements, the goal being to clear as much of the Terran defenses as possible. And after 3 minutes, a cinematic nuclear strike happens. My forces are wiped out, and I have to rebuild my own army to breach the Tactical Operations Center deep inside of the Terran base. This is another mission where Kerrigan can go solo, and fortunately it's the last one for a while. Instead of cleaning the areas for new bases during the initial assault, Kerrigan snipes enemy sources of detection, clearing a path towards the objective. After the countdown finishes, Kerrigan's position is reset to my new base, so she runs back and continues clearing. Attack waves on this map can be very frightening. Luckily, they spawn mostly near the objective, meaning that Kerrigan can weaken them before they move to my poorly defended base. Once inside of the final wall, Kerrigan has to slowly clear out all the production structures. I couldn't find time to engage the objective until Warfield just stopped making stuff. And after the area is secure, I engaged the objective and completely forgot that there was a giant gun that shoots back. This means Kerrigan has to repeatedly blow all of her cooldowns on the target and then pull back when low on hit points to regenerate with Mend. Once the gun eventually dies, the mission is over. And despite the end being painful, Char was the easiest part of this run by far. After reclaiming the Zerg homeworld, it's time to directly attack Skygear Station, a Dominion research facility. The mission Infested is pretty neat. I unlock the Infestor, a spellcaster who can mind control enemy units. Additionally, there are a bunch of Dominion garrisons around the map. I can bring an Infestor to them to bring them under Zerg control, spawning limitless numbers of AI-controlled infested Terran. Occasionally, the Terran gas the entire facility, killing the infested, stopping the spawning temporarily, and giving the Dominion an opportunity to counterattack. The Dominion forces have a high number of tanks, battle cruisers, and Thors, as well as other powerful weapons defending the facility. Ideally, the Zerg uses Infestors to capture the garrison, and then the infinite waves of infested Terran relentlessly push forward, giving cover for the Infestors to use mind control on the Terran units. This all sounds great on paper, but this is a devless run, and due to rule number 2, I can't exactly send hordes of infested Terran to their demise. So after capturing each garrison, I kill it before it can spawn infested Terran, which leaves me with a big problem. The Terran army completely outclasses me in every way. I'm past the point where I can rely on Kerrigan to kill things on her own, which means if the ground is impassable, there's only one option left: lots of Mutalisks. Kerrigan isn't entirely useless here. She at least has enough firepower to clear through the nearby expansion so I can grab the Vespene geysers to increase my production. But overall, the mission was very boring. I sat around for 25 minutes slowly building up a Mutalisk force until I got bored and attacked. The open airspace on the map is clustered with missile turrets, so Mutalisks have to push through the edges of the base, sniping one unit at a time and then going back to heal. After the headquarters goes down, the mission ends. Finally. Once we're inside of the facility, Hand of Darkness is the first time that Kerrigan is introduced to the hybrid, who will appear as the main antagonist for the remainder of StarCraft 2. They're much more dangerous than other units, equal in power to capital ships. One by one, these hybrid release from their holding cells and start draining Kerrigan's life. If the countdown ever hits 0, game over. Normally, this time is used for Kerrigan and her forces to clear to the hybrid and kill them, but with flyers, most defenses can be circumvented, which opens up a very sneaky strategy. The hybrid and their Terran defenders aren't actually on the same team, so why should I risk my units when the Terran can do the dirty work for me? I initially thought the Terran would soften up the hybrid for me, but they went above and beyond my expectations. The first one dies with me barely lifting a finger. Ecstatic with the results, I try again. There's also a pair of Brutalisk bonus objectives on the map that can be rescued. No Man Left Behind means I have to save these bad boys, which works out well because this group did not fare well against the hybrid opponent, but my Brutalisk was hungry. The next hybrid is behind a Terran base, which means I get to watch this guy melt through an entire Terran legion, but unfortunately the humans couldn't deal with the illusion spell, so I had to finish him off again. But very soon, the Terran have a chance to redeem themselves. The Terran are holding nothing back this time, and they managed to do it. Score 2 for the Dominion. The final hybrids spawn in a pair, and we're not having any of that silly Dominion fighting stuff. I decided to split them up and fight them over this ledge. They can't cast Psystorm on my army because they don't have vision up here, making the end of the mission significantly easier. After Hand of Darkness, Kerrigan meets up with our good friend Dr. Nerud. While the Doctor and Kerrigan go off on a playdate to do some Dragon Ball Z LARPing, Stukov brings us a new exciting toy to play with, the Ultralisk. We have control of Stukov as our hero for the mission, and he has 3 abilities: a bolt of acid that reduces armor, spawn-infested Terran, and a life regeneration aura. While the infested Terran are more than useless, the other abilities are great. The objective of Phantoms of the Void is super unique. There are 5 altars scattered around the map that need to be secured. Each is guarded by a progressively stronger group of enemies. Securing each altar gives us the power of friendship, which lets us enhance Kerrigan's Kamehameha wave. The Ultralisk is the bulkiest Zerg unit by far. Combined with the Queen's Heal and Stukov's life regeneration aura, it is tough to take down. As Stukov channels at each altar, he's unable to move or attack, but can still Corrosive Blast to weaken enemies. The hybrid that defend can kill normal Zerg in a couple of hits, but these Ultralisks barely notice them. Each temple is easier than the last, as my army scales out of control. The 5th temple might have a ton of enemies to fight, but I didn't even bother doing it near Stukov. And after the mission, I upgrade my thick boys with tissue assimilation. Now for something completely different. Kerrigan contacts Matt Horner and Valerian about searching for Jim Raynor. They tried to convince Matt's wife, Mira Han, to help, but she's still angry that we never hired her mercenaries in the Wings of Liberty run, so a fight breaks out. That means it's time to take the Hyperion on a joyride. The Hyperion starts with two abilities, a short-range teleport on a low cooldown and launch TAC fighters. These small interceptors can die, so they're not going to be used. This makes the beginning of the mission pretty rough. Swarms of fighters mob the Hyperion, and the TACs are supposed to provide a buffer and extra damage, but instead I have to manage the groups very carefully as I kite. After reaching the first ordnance tower, I unlock Yamato Cannon. Long-range snipes are going to be key for the early parts of this fight. Occasionally we run across repair bots. I try to wait until I'm low on HP before using them. There are also floating minerals around the map. Once the Hyperion is gathered enough, Swan upgrades it, making everything better. To make up for the lack of fighters, I need as many of these upgrades as I can get. We also have Valerian's spaceship spawning fighters and occasional battle cruisers. It is not possible to keep the AI-controlled fighters alive here, but I am going to finish the mission as fast as possible to save as many as possible. Even after the Hyperion gets leveled up a few times, enemy fighters are still deadly. Eventually, battle cruisers start spawning, but well-placed Yamato cannons are enough to beat them. I also dodged a Yamato cannon shot in mid-air with the teleport, and I'm really proud of it. After clearing Tamira's station, waves of mines and fighters spawn. But I was responsible and left a bunch of repair drones around the map, making the fight possible. Eventually, the station goes down and Mira Han forgives us. This mission is really bizarre, but it's a lot of fun. When talking to most people about the mission Conviction, they generally respond with, which mission was that again? It's generally a forgettable stomp where Kerrigan blasts through a Dominion prison ship to rescue Jim Raynor. Surprising everybody, including me, it's the hardest mission in this run. For a bit, I actually thought it was impossible. Kerrigan is gonna need a special build for this one. I replaced Mend with Wild Mutation, and I've also unlocked a new ability tier for Kerrigan, grabbing ability efficiency. The challenge on Conviction is not the power of the enemy attack waves, but the reinforcements that I receive. Throughout the mission, Nidus Worms blast through the walls, tossing Zerg units right into the fray. From a visual perspective, it is freaking sweet. But Zerglings being thrown into melee range with Firebats ends a run instantly. That is where Wild Mutation comes in. Its shield means that a well-timed mutation onto allies as they spawn can keep them safe for a few seconds. Nonetheless, enemy groups are pretty scary. After burrowing all my starting Zerglings, I have access only to Kerrigan and a couple Hydralisks against a large group of infantry. Eventually I get a Queen and a couple of Roaches so that my army gets a bit of sustainability. Stunning enemies with Crushing Grip is essential here. There are enemy ghosts who rapid fire snipes against Kerrigan's army. I wonder where they learned that from. Kerrigan once again carries the mission for the most part, but there is a point where she has to channel at a door while waves of enemies come. Learning the spawn order and crushing them quickly is key. And because I have infestors, they can mind control the Thor, whose firepower I do need. The next room has garrisons to infect, spawning infested Terrans similarly to the infested mission. The Terran defenses are also similarly monstrous. Kerrigan has to clear through everything on her own here, but I do make sure to mind control the second Thor. Clearing this out without infested was a slow and painful process. But there is some good news. Apparently allied reinforcements spawn based on how many units you've lost. This Nidus Worm just busts onto the scene and awkwardly sits there instead of depositing Zerglings into combat. The final room in the first section is not too difficult as long as you don't fight in range of the tanks. Part 2 is where it starts getting sketchy though. It's similar to the first section, but it's timed. I have 5 minutes to clear through it all. The first enemy group has 2 Thors, so my infestors do their thing, and now we have a Thortet. My massive army then makes getting to the end easy, but the final fight is a disaster. The Terran have an entrenched position. It's not possible to slam Zerg into it and keep everything alive. I also only have 2 minutes to clear everything out, which wouldn't be a problem if it wasn't for this dang Nidus Worm. This guy busts through the wall, delivering reinforcements directly into the fray no matter what. The reinforcements include Zerglings, which get vaporized instantly by the tanks and Marines. The only way I found to have this work out is Kerrigan charging in, kinetic blasting the tank to the left while aggroing everything possible, and once the reinforcement wave spawns, the tank in the north will start rotating its turret to fire. Before it manages to swing over, I have to Wild Mutation the entire army and then burrow it. I only have a few frames to do it. Needless to say, I failed this trick a lot. After finally managing to save the Lings, burrow all the reinforcements, and avoid death with Kerrigan, I can bring in the Thors to eliminate the enemy from range. They're the only thing with the durability and firepower to clear the area before the timer expires. Now imagine how tough it would be to do this mission before unlocking the Infestor. I definitely didn't waste almost 3 hours doing that. But now Kerrigan has enough levels to unlock her ultimate ability, Apocalypse. She also has 2 other ultimate abilities, but we don't talk about those. With Char back under Zerg control, Jim Raynor safe, and Stukov bringing the Ultralisks, there's only one thing left to do: kill Emperor Mengsk. In order to land the majority of the Zerg swarm, the Terran anti-air guns must be disabled. Despite being the exact same thing we killed in Mission 3 with Queens and Kerrigan, this time they can only be taken down by bio-launchers because reasons. Planetfall marks the beginning of the endgame of Heart of the Swarm. From now on, almost every enemy I will fight will be an elite version, similar to the mercenaries from Wings of Liberty, making them significantly more powerful than my unevolved swarm. 5 bio-launchers drop onto the planet's surface, and after landing, they'll deploy and start sieging the anti-air guns. I open up with a composition of spine crawlers and queens. Each time a bio-launcher lands, I leave spine crawlers with it to keep them safe. As the second launcher lands, I start transitioning into Ultralisks. They're the only way that a ground army can engage Mengsk's tanks. And Kerrigan's new Apocalypse spell has a long cooldown, but it annihilates everything that it hits. I took the expansion in the middle of the map, but it ended up being attacked so often that I'm not convinced it was a good choice. Once I max out, I use the Ultralisk to destroy the Terran outposts around the map. The final bio-launcher is attacked by some super heavy weaponry, but my healing is just too much. And after the last launcher is set up, the only thing left to do is clean up the Terran forces. Now that the Zerg swarm has landed on the planet, it's time to go back into orbit and destroy a Side Destroyer? Alright. First, Dahaka must temporarily disable the Side Destroyer by severing its power link. Dahaka's grab ability stuns enemies and brings them to him, making the first link an easy target. After it's down, Kerrigan has 6 minutes to make what progress she can before the destroyer field comes up again. This mission sticks to the theme of insane Terran defenses, but this time it's cheesable. I run Kerrigan past the majority of the Terran defenses, and once at the destroyer, I kinetic blast these detectors and allow Kerrigan to burrow. To kill the destroyer, Kerrigan unburrows, kinetic blasts, uses men to heal, and then burrows until her cooldowns are reset. Rinse and repeat until victory. This is it, the final mission, the Reckoning. The entirety of the Dominion's elite, siege breakers, battle cruisers, warhounds, and even the Odin stand between us and Emperor Mengsk. Mengsk holds nothing back in this ultimate showdown, the conclusion of a decade-old storyline of betrayal, power, and vengeance. It's really a shame that you can just sit over here and snipe the objective with Burrow and Kinetic Blast again. Heart of the Swarm Deathless is overall a very difficult run. It's really a shame that unlike the other StarCraft campaigns, it doesn't go out with a bang, but with a whimper. But if you are looking for a bang, stay tuned for Legacy of the Void because it's coming up next, and it is sweet.
Reports been coming in from all over. Dominion worlds overrun. Outposts destroyed. A lot more dead boys out there. Warriors.
Death is the fate of all warriors. A fate we too may soon embrace.
Not if I have anything to say about it. Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Giant Grant Games, and I am here to answer the question, is it possible to beat StarCraft 2 Legacy of the Void without losing a unit? By now I assume you know the rules, and so do I, so let's jump right into it. Legacy of the Void starts off with a bang. I'm given an enormous Protoss army and told to smash through the Zerg to reclaim our homeworld. Unfortunately, a majority of the units I'm given are zealots who have a tendency to die terribly. After heroically retreating them, my army is significantly less impressive. Zerg defenses are intense, so I have to use Blink Stalkers to pull enemies into smaller, more approachable groups. Fortunately, the starting area of the mission has an immobile mothership and some photon cannons to help me out. The first blockade goes down without much issue, and I'm rewarded with 4 Colossus, who deal out damage quickly to clumped up Zerg and outrange spine crawlers, and other static defenses. There are 4 Zerg hives on the map, and when each is destroyed, I'm rewarded with a warp-in of Zealot reinforcements. No man left behind means that I'll be clearing the entire map for a group of fairly useless new friends. The main objective of the mission is to secure 3 warp conduits to reinforce the attack. After rescuing a few immortals, killing another 2 hives, and a reinforcement point, I reach the final conduit. And surprising nobody besides Zeratul, there are hybrid on Ire. These ones go down pretty easy to my large army, but in general, hybrid are going to be a constant source of frustration in the run. They are some of the strongest units in the game, and it will be a while before my army is this powerful again. After finishing off the final hybrid, the mission is over, and in total, I was given 127 zealots and 32 units that I could actually fight with. The Growing Shadow is the first macro mission of the campaign. After a short jog with my stalkers, I unlock a base and start building. I have 2 units available, the Mobile Stalker and the Zealot, who will be avoided as much as possible throughout the run. The combination of speed, a ranged attack, and blink means that the Stalker is an excellent unit for the beginning of this challenge. Whenever a Stalker loses their shields, blink it back and let them regenerate. There are 3 void pylons on the map, capturing each brings me a reinforcement wave of Stalkers. This is the type of mission where a Deathless run shines. The Templar base is supposed to be difficult to breach, but my robust Stalker squad doesn't care. And after a short segment of blinking around with Zeratul, the mission is over. The mission Spear of Adun gives me access to the Spear of Adun, a customizable bar of abilities that can be called down for an energy cost. Most of the abilities cost between 50 and 75 energy, and it regenerates at about 25 per minute. The first ability I gain is Deploy Pylon. To complement it, I also gain the ability to warp in Protoss units from gateways. Unfortunately, I don't gain any new combat units, so it's Stalker time again. The objective of Spear of Adun is super unique. There are 4 creep-covered power cells scattered around the map that need to be destroyed. Each is guarded by a progressively stronger force of enemies. After gaining control of each cell, the enemy sends a powerful attack wave against me. I don't want to deal with this, so I decide to clear most of each point and then finish all 4 simultaneously, skipping the only real danger in the mission. After finishing the tutorial missions, we can go to Core Hall. The objective of Sky Shield is super unique. There are 4 platform stabilizers scattered around the map that need to be secured. Each is guarded by a progressively stronger force of enemies. The catch is that I'm on the clock. Timed missions can be very difficult for Deathless runs. If I can sit around, build up my forces, and take small fights, it's generally pretty easy. But Legacy of the Void loves to force mistakes with a time limit. Unit unlocking in Legacy of the Void works differently than other campaigns. There are 10 unit archetypes that are unlocked throughout the run. At any time, I can have 1 unit type from each archetype, but I can switch between missions at will. Right now, I only have access to the Melee Warrior and the Ranged Warrior archetypes. Melee Warriors are various zealots, so they'll die, and the Dragoon is too much of a liability for a Deathless run, which means I'm getting a little bit sick of building mass Stalkers. I quickly clear to the closest objective to build myself a buffer of time. I unlock the Orbital Bombardment ability on the top bar. It can target down high priority Protoss targets and entrenched positions. It's crucial for the early parts of the run. There are also 3 EMP scramblers around the map that act as bonus objectives. They drain my shields until destroyed, and each rewards Solarite, a resource that will be used for the rest of the run to improve my top bar. I wait for a long time before engaging to build up my forces. Blink allows me to dodge the powerful Raven Seeker missiles, and after the Ravens have spent their energy, defensive blinking is more than enough to secure the remaining points. And now we get to Brothers in Arms, which unlocks a new class of units, the Immortal, a heavy-hitting, high-durability unit who can actually fight back against the hybrid. This mission is normally pretty easy. I have 2 Terran allies who defend against a Terran opponent. Occasionally, there are disruption pulses that stun all Terrans on the map, friend and foe, and then a wave of hybrid attack my allies and I have to defend them. My allies also try to attack during this mission, but in Legacy of the Void, I'm taking allied deaths very seriously. So I begin my construction project. I completely wall my allies in, and they can't send their attack waves anymore. I try to incorporate my wall into their defenses so my pylons won't be killed by the enemy attackers. The first few disruption events are easy. The hybrid count is low and shield batteries are enough to keep my Immortals alive. The Immortal is the only unit I have that's robust enough to take on the hybrid without dying, so I'm once again stuck in a fairly monotone army. My allies keep building attack waves but can't send them out to fight. I have no worries about them being able to defend as a result. And after maxing out and marching across the map comes one of the scariest enemies in the run, the Hybrid Dominator. Did I say one? Dominators fire bolts of energy that kill any unit besides the Immortal in one shot and leave Immortals almost dead. They also have a Psy Storm that does big damage in an area and a powerful ranged attack. This fight is miserable and took me a lot of attempts to get right, and my secret to success was mostly getting lucky. Next up is the planet Shikoros. I unlock the Dark Templar unit and the Solar Lance top bar ability. Solar Lance's targeting makes it a very flexible ability that I'll be using often during this run. The objective of Amon's Reach is super unique. There are 4 creep-covered launch bays scattered around the map that need to be destroyed. Each is guarded by a progressively stronger group of enemies. Because this mission is designed to showcase the Dark Templar, even casual players can beat it without losing a unit. Use Solar Lance to snipe detectors. The Dark Templar then have free reign to just attack the objective objective uncontested. And then comes Last Stand, another freebie mission. I have to defend the temple until 1.5 billion Zerg reach the planet. Although it takes a while, there's no reason to build a single unit here. Photon cannons, shield batteries, and Nexus Overcharge are more than enough to breeze through this mission. Every run has a freebie planet, and for Legacy of the Void, it was absolutely Shakoros. Forbidden Weapon is another one of those stressful timed missions. I have to reach the objective before the Tal'Darim use their giant death laser to destroy it. I unlock the Sentry, who can spend energy to restore allied shields. This sounds nice on paper, but the Sentry itself is very fragile, and I can't justify using it much in the run. But for now, they can act as support for my Immortals. Sentries and Immortals are not nimble units, and microing them can get very clunky at times. But just because I'm racing against a giant death laser doesn't mean that I can't engage in some healthy cooperation to speed things up. The biggest problem on the mission is that there are attack waves against my base, and they are rough, but leaving things at home would slow me down too much. I ended up letting my buildings be burned down while Photon Overcharge on the Nexus slowly whittled the enemies away. The end of the mission is a gauntlet, and things get rough. Enemy defenses ramp up exponentially, warp prisms fly in to power enemy defenses, and I'm reminded how truly horrible the Sentry's damage output is. The final room has a Wrathwalker, a Colossus variant that can kill almost anything in the game in 2 shots. It has to be eliminated quickly. But once a Wrathwalker is down, the mission is over. This brings me to Ulnar, where I unlock one of my favorite units in the game, the Phoenix. There are 5 locks on Temple of Unification. If either faction stands on a lock for more than a few seconds, they gain control of it. The mission is to control all 5 locks simultaneously. And the Phoenix is a phenomenal unit here. Defenses around the locks are fairly heavy, but this nimble flyer can easily circumvent difficult areas. Frustratingly, the enemies are constantly sending attack forces to recapture the locks. Normally, I would station a garrison to defend, but the potential of losing defenders is way too high. Instead, the Phoenix have to constantly run around recapturing the locks. The bonus objective is to kill a Titanic warp prism. It's well defended, but all the running around gave me time to build my forces up. Eventually, my army is large enough to split into 2. I can take one squadron of Phoenix to the south to reclaim the locks, while the second defends up top, and after 22 minutes, the game of whack-a-mole is over. Initially, I thought that the infinite cycle would be easy. I'm given control of Kerrigan and Artanis, and told that if they die, I lose, which sounds perfect for a Deathless run. But what I forgot is that the duo's only reliable source of area damage is Kerrigan's Spawn Baneling's ability. This complicates things more than I thought it would. Artanis has a dash attack that can stun as well as a heal, and Kerrigan, without Spawn Banelings, only has Kinetic Blast. There are a lot of small spawning constructs that are normally killed instantly, but they put out a surprising amount of damage here. The goal of the Infinite Cycle is to progress through 3 sections to reach the temples at the end. Waves of enemies then spawn, and it's important to Kinetic Blast the dropships before they can unload. Otherwise, things get out of control. Because my damage is significantly lower than I want it to be, killing Hybrid is slow, and killing enemies before they can warp in is essential to reduce the difficulty. Once the Hybrid Reavers start spawning in, Artanis cannot out-heal their damage and has to start kiting. Each segment is more challenging than the last. And then in part 3, the segment is timed, but the timer isn't actually that strict, so it's fine. The final temple is defended by a lot of enemies, but I can engage them in multiple groups instead of diving in, making the fight much easier. The final enemy is a hybrid behemoth, who's incredibly powerful, but not very fast and also can be stunned, making him pretty easy. Returning to macro missions, I'm given a powerful new spellcaster in the Protoss arsenal, the High Templar. Due to having 80 HP, the High Templar will be retiring to the back of my base after this short no-build section. And once I can start making stuff, it's time to complain about Harbinger of Oblivion. The main objective of the mission is super unique. There are 4 void crystals on the map that need to be eliminated. Each crystal is defended by an increasingly strong group of enemies. I'm also given a completely useless Kerrigan AI who serves no purpose in the mission other than complaining and dying. And complaining's my job. At the back of Kerrigan's base, a void rift slowly consumes her base. It's impossible to keep all allies alive on this mission. But there is an achievement to win the mission before Kerrigan loses more than 3 of her hives, so I use this as a benchmark for keeping my ally alive. The beginning of the mission isn't bad. The Dark Templar clean up the low number of enemies defending the first crystal. The second crystal is well defended from one angle, but laughably undefended from another. But once that crystal goes down, problems start to arise. The final 2 are defended by hybrid dominators, whose Plasma Blast kills my units in one shot. Combined with defensive carriers, void rays, ravens, and battle cruisers means that I'm in for a frustrating time. I try using Dark Templar. Their Shadow Fury ability allows me to avoid Plasma Blast, but this means that I can't hit flyers. After burning all of my Spear of Adun energy to neutralize the air, there's one final objective, but I have a problem: time. There's more air, which means I need more Spear of Adun energy, which needs more time, that I just don't have. I spent about half an hour attempting to bust this final base. Nothing I do is working. I just don't have the tools available to successfully finish this mission. Eventually, I restarted. It's cheesing time. I changed my Dark Templar from the traditional Nerazim faction to the Ire Avenger. Generally, the Avenger is considered the worst Dark Templar, but its death recall is perfect for this mission. Once I have enough, I simply click on the crystal and waited. The hybrid would activate their death recall ability, but that's fine with me. The first crystal drops easily and there's only 3 left, but I decide that conventional tactics against the final crystals wouldn't work. Instead, I run a flyer through the corruption to the top of the map, and once I have vision, I start using Solar Lance every time it's off cooldown to attack the objective. It takes a total of 4 shots to kill it, which is a lot, but it was worth it to avoid the hassle of killing the final enemy gauntlet. And once my Avenger army is large enough and death recall is off cooldown, I click on the objective. Maybe sniping detectors here would have been correct, but I was feeling lazy and it doesn't matter. And using Solar Lance on the objective works so well, I made a Corsair and did it again. The reason I can get away with this is because the enemies send very few attack waves on this mission, and they only have a single source of detection they send with it. If the enemy brought more detection, this strategy would not be viable in the slightest. With one triumphant charge towards the crystal, Death Recall DTs can retire, knowing that they've served the Protoss well. One of my favorite things in challenge runs is when something that's generally considered to be not that good ends up being completely overpowered due to weird circumstances. So good job, Avenger DTs. With Ulnar finished, we can now pick our planets again, and I beeline towards the planet Slain. The unit I get there is incredible, and I fully intend to abuse it as the difficulty of Legacy of the Void starts to spike. Steps of the Right flips back and forth between 2 states. First, it's a normal map where the Tal'Darim Protoss occasionally send attack waves against my base, but once the Terrazine fog sets in, waves of phantom enemies from all races attack me. These specters take a lot more damage than their real counterparts, but they can easily kill my stuff if I get careless. To hold them off, I'm given the Void Ray, a flying destroyer who gains power over time as it attacks. Because flyers in StarCraft 2 can stack on top of each other, it means that as long as I avoid area damage, I can create a giant ball of lasers that melts everything within range. After the fog subsides, I move my army out. The objective of Steps of the Right is super unique. There are 4 Guardians of Malash scattered around the map that need to be destroyed. Each is guarded by a progressively stronger force of enemies. But the edges of the map are basically empty, meaning Void Rays can easily travel from objective to objective without being attacked. After sniping a Guardian, I move back to defend the fog, repeat a couple times, and the mission ends without an issue. And then comes Rite of Rakshir, a very cool tug of war. Alarak and Malash battle in the center of the map. Both the enemy and I can psionically support our champion by being nearby. There are 2 pits, and whoever pushes their opponent into the pit first is the winner. The Void Ray is specifically good against Protoss because it deals bonus damage to armored targets, and the large majority of Protoss anti-air is armored. And I am completely fine abusing this until I have to go back to Terran and Zerg enemies. First, I build a nice little fort near my pit so I can have some time before Alarak is pushed in. The enemy stacks up tight when pushing the objective, so Solar Lance can punish them. I then go after the 3 elementals around the map as bonus objectives. They do stun my units, but they're not really a big threat. The only scary enemies are the hybrid dominators, who I do have to let blast my cannons before I can move in to clean up. But after the bonuses are down, it's time for the death push. Protoss just doesn't have anything that can stop 25 Void Rays. I save shield overcharge for the hybrid at the end, and it's a free win. Void Rays are pretty good. The Carrier is another one of my favorite units in StarCraft 2, a massive capital ship who launches a swarm of interceptors to overwhelm its foes. It's really a shame that those interceptors have 40 HP and can die, so the unit is completely useless. But Templar's charge is really cool nonetheless. My base is on a platform that can be moved around the map. Once my resources run out, I simply click a button and move to another field. Each platform has enemies on it that need to be cleared out before my base arrives. Because the Carrier isn't viable, I'm forced into Void Rays again, but they are effective. Shield overcharge gives Void Rays enough time to charge up their lasers, and the enemy attacks against my base are infrequent and weak. Honestly, at this point I'm getting a little bit bored of massing Void Rays, but they are doing the trick. And after targeting down the objectives, it's on to a bit more interesting of a mission. In Unsealing the Past, I unlock another one of my favorite units, the Colossus. It deals huge damage to ground units in a perpendicular line, and can walk up and down cliffs. The objective of this mission is a pseudo-escort. The megalith automatically moves from point to point, and it's my job to clear the path. Ideally, I'm always a few steps ahead of the megalith so that it doesn't die. The map is made up of a series of long, winding canyons with Zerg on all sides. I decide to make stalkers to supplement the Colossus. The blink ability means that they can move up and down the cliffs freely, which is really cool and adds a lot of tactical flexibility. It's a nice refresher from moving void rays all the time. Occasionally, the megalith does catch up to my clearing, but it's not an issue. It doesn't hit hard, but it's very bulky. Between the 3rd and 4th points, there are caves that spawn infinite numbers of Zerg. Knocking down the rocks ASAP to seal the caves is important. The final point is in the middle of the Zerg's primary hive cluster. Nidus worms constantly spawn in enemies, and the choke point means I have to blink frantically to keep my stalkers alive. After the final hive has been cleared, there's nothing left to do but wait for the megalith and massage my pained wrists. Purification is another fun mission. I spawn in the middle of a large space station infected with Zerg, and there are 4 quadrants that each have 3 null circuits in them. Whenever the 3 circuits in a quadrant are cleared, an enormous allied army of Protoss spawns and attacks a heavily fortified Zerg base in the corner. Wait, that's bad. If I want to retain my allies, I'm gonna have to get creative. The Tempest is generally considered the worst Protoss capital ship. It has long range and a medium damage attack that fires very slowly. Usually they're just not worth the cost, but it makes them ideal in this specific mission. The terrain has lots of dead zones with many ramps and cliffs where the Tempest can abuse, striking their target from an unreachable position. I can use the Tempest to slowly clear 2 of the 3 null circuits in each of the quadrants. And once there's only 1 circuit remaining in each of the 4 quadrants, I can split my Tempests into 4 groups, and with the power of my new Time Stop ultimate ability, I can disable the defenders briefly while I break all 4 simultaneously. Because if my allies never spawn, then they can never get killed. Now that I've recruited the Tal'Darim and the Purifiers to my side, it's time to invade Aiur, again. Templar's Charge has 3 distinct portions to it. First, Vorazun and Alarak move together throughout the map. The mission fails here if either dies, so there's not much to talk about. The next portion has Karax and Talendar together. Talendar is a brutal melee attacker, and Karax can mind control enemy robotics. The goal is to build up a big army and engage a large hybrid force at the end. Knowing how strong the enemies are at the finale, I make sure to reclaim every robotic unit on the map. Of the 60 required army supply you need to fight the final section, I ended up with 114. Not bad. Karax can spawn photon cannons to tank, and the hybrid are vaporized by my overwhelming firepower. The 3rd section is the most difficult one by far. I'm given Artanis, some vanguards, and zealots. The objective is to clear to the end as fast as possible while a blue wall of death follows. Generally, I'd want to put the zealots in the back and clear with the good units, but I can't due to the tight timing of the mission. I try to have Artanis soak shots so my zealots don't take too much damage, and as I clear, I eventually encounter some allied forces attacking Zerg bases. Once the Zerg are down, the Protoss forces join me. This means that my army is now large enough that I can leave the spinny zealots in the back and still clear at a decent speed. And at the next encampment, I'm rewarded with Dark Templar. The DTs and Artanis can safely take down forward Nidus worms before they can spawn too much. They then move into the final section, where there are caves that spawn infinite numbers of Zerg. The Dark Templar once again can collapse the rocks to seal the caves, and the mission is over. The objective of the host is super unique. There are 5 void shards scattered around the map that need to be destroyed. Each is guarded by a progressively stronger force of enemies. The first shard goes down pretty easily, gaining me a fast expansion. And that's good because I need a large army as quickly as I can get it. The enemy constantly sends attack waves of mixed unit types. Mismanaging an attack while my army is across the map is an easy way to lose a unit and cause a reset. After grabbing a couple Colossus, I transition into Adept and Sentry production. The Adepts are decent against everything, and the Sentries can keep my shields up. But I don't think this mission would be possible without Time Stop. I approach the second objective and use it to snipe the Void Shard. Once I max out with a Mothership, I can snipe the 3rd Void Shard with Time Stop as well. I was looking for opportunities to do damage here without resorting to Time Stop, but they honestly never came. The enemy defenses on this map are overwhelming. The Time Stop strategy is consistent and reliable, but it's not the most interesting thing I've ever done. This brings us to the final mission before the epilogue, a 30-minute time defense mission where we defend 3 lanes with our allies. Vorazun, Alarak, and Karax each position their forces in front of a lane, and it is not possible to guarantee that none of these allied forces die. Mainly because I don't even think it's possible to keep track of it. So I decided that there'd be 2 conditions for this mission. Number 1, Alrak, Vorazun, and Karax must survive. And number 2, each of the commander's Nexi must also survive. That's because there's an achievement if all 3 Nexus survive, so it's easy to keep track of. The early stages of the mission are about building up an economy while relatively minor attack waves strike your allies in succession. They're nothing to worry about. Karax has a passive aura that dramatically increases nearby structures' production speed. I had no idea about this until one of my stream chatters told me about it, but a 5-minute mothership is easily able to burn through the next couple attack waves on her own. I decide to leave Energizer sentries at each allied base. The buff that they provide helps me clean up enemies and allows me to move between defense points more quickly. Unfortunately, most of my composition is going to be a little bit boring again. This is because the Protoss send the Golden Armada at me in more and more intimidating chunks. And the only thing that I have that can fight off against the huge burst damage that Skytoss has is Void Rays. I have to beat the Golden Armada quickly and efficiently. The Spear of Adun top bar abilities are the main reason this run has been possible so far, but throughout the mission, these abilities are destroyed, making the fight significantly more difficult as time goes on. Vorazun is the most resilient of the allied commanders. Her stealth means that all I have to do is snipe enemy detectors and she can manage on her own. Karax, on the other hand, is incredibly weak. His units die quickly and I have to spend a lot of focus keeping him up and alive. And Alrak has a tendency to charge himself into the middle of the enemy forces to get himself killed, so I trapped him in a box to keep him safe from himself. I eventually left the mothership with Vorazun in the north, while the Void Rays would move between the other bases to defend. I know that Purifier Beam is the weakest of the ultimate skills on the Spear of Adun, but it looks so freaking sweet here. At the 50% mark, I split my Void Rays into 2 separate armies. Having 3 independent fleets allows me to respond to crises much more quickly before my allies are overwhelmed. I then use my remaining cooldowns wherever the Golden Armada spawns. Large bursts of damage from enemy Protoss capital ships are very dangerous. And after maxing out, I'm in pure photon cannon production mode. At 66%, my final defensive cooldown is destroyed, and I need to make sure that cannons are the ones taking all the hits. The Zerg attack from all 3 sides at once. I can't micro every side, and I kinda just get lucky that none of the Void Rays die. The attack waves are absolutely insane at this point. Mutalisk, Carrier, Tempest, Mothership, Scout is a very difficult composition to deal with when I don't have my abilities. But the cannons and voids hold strong, and the mission is finally finished. Now let's take the fight to Amon. There are 3 missions in the Legacy of the Void epilogue. In each mission, you play as a different race. First is Protoss, then Terran, and finishing up the story is Zerg. Unfortunately, I don't get to customize the unit upgrades and powers that I'm given for these missions, making things a bit more difficult. In a normal StarCraft playthrough, Into the Void is one of my favorite missions in the game. The Protoss, Zerg, and Terran forces all push together in an enormous map, slowly taking territory from the hybrid until they finally beat their leader. Unfortunately, deathless runs are not a great time for a 40-minute slog across the map. Before I plan an attack though, there's something else I need to take care of. Much better. Now back to business. I start building Phoenix out of my Stargate and getting air attack upgrades, and I never stop. Eventually, I hit a critical mass of Phoenix and head up the side of the map. The units and upgrades I'm given are a weird mix of useful and useless. Fortunately, I'm given the overpowered time stop ability, and the final boss can be attacked by air units. The Phoenix swoop in and can easily finish the mission. Looking back on the StarCraft 2 Deathless runs, there are a few standout missions that took quite a bit of time and effort for me to solve. The final missions of Wings of Liberty and the Crucible on Heart of the Swarm both stand out as missions where I had to spend over 2 hours perfecting my defenses against overwhelming odds. They did nothing to prepare me for the essence of eternity. This mission took me over 4.5 hours of attempts to solve. This is, without a doubt, the most difficult Deathless mission in StarCraft 2. I'm playing as Terran in the mission, and much to Terran's style, it's a defense mission where I'm supposed to hunker down and defend with siege tanks. To the south and east are Protoss and Zerg bases, manned by Artanis and Zagara, while Kerrigan is currentlings being taught the secrets of an even better Kamehameha wave by a space manatee. Every enemy wave has immensely powerful units, battle cruisers, carriers, broodlords, and the works. Kerrigan can shoot them down, but when she's fighting, the mission timer stalls out. And for the rule about keeping allies alive, I went with the same heroes have to live and nexuses have to stay alive. And this is where the mission runs into its first snag. Considering he's the hierarch of the Protoss, I am impressed at how absolutely useless Artanis is. This is what it looks like on the very first attack wave with Artanis. He literally gets himself killed. This is going to be rough. Luckily, Zagara is actually competent and able to fend for herself at the beginning. The issue with Artanis is that he can dash through buildings. Unlike Alarak, who needs proper pathing in order to use his dash attack, Artanis goes through any barricade you construct as soon as he sees an enemy, and it's a really big problem. In order to solve this problem, I have to make a fancy trap. This is Depot Canyon. It has a proper exit at the top, and when Artanis sees that the nearby planetary fortress is attacked, he snaps into action and heads out. Once he's in the north, I close the trap, and now he's in Depot Prison. Depot Prison is far enough away from the enemies that Artanis will never be aggroed by them again. Now all I have to do is worry about the rest of the mission. I don't know the specifics about how this works, but I'm convinced that observing a battle in StarCraft 2 changes its result. There are many times in this mission where the enemies attack multiple places at once, and without touching anything, the battle that was on my screen would go perfectly fine. And the battle where my screen was not would result in repairing SCVs dying. And if I were to reload an exact copy of the mission and move my screen to the second fight, that fight would go well, and the fight that's now off screen that was fine before would have SCVs die. I don't know how this works. I don't know if the computer takes some form of shorthand when it comes to processing off-screen battles. I don't know if it applies only to this campaign or everywhere, but I do believe that to some extent this effect exists. That means this mission is about brute force and luck. Losing to random enemies for no reason, reloading, finding a solution to each and every battle, hoping that it goes well, and then doing it again. It was horrible. If you want to do your own StarCraft 2 Deathless run, I give you permission to skip the epilogue. This brings us to the final mission in Legacy of the Void, which is probably the most universally hated mission in StarCraft. All you do is fight a bunch of rocks. In theory, there are a bunch of enemies on this map that you can go to and engage, but there's not really any point. Particularly in this run, where if things die, it's just a liability, the best way to play the mission is to just sit at home, build up a bunch of Mutalisks, max out, and never use Xel'Naga Kerrigan. We just go and beat up a bunch of rocks. It's really disappointing and frustrating that the end of the trilogy is so lackluster. And if that's not enough, the mission doesn't have a score screen either. I hate this mission. But despite the mission being bad, we now have official confirmation. It is possible to beat all of StarCraft 2 without losing a unit. Who knew? Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this remaster of these old Deathless videos. Nowadays, I would approach the missions with a lot more variety, but back then, I had to do what I could. It was a tough challenge. Once again, thank you for watching. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you guys later. Peace!